Okay, so starting off today's show, there is an article published on Bleacher Report, and they asked to their seven main football writers, who would you rather have, Mahomes or Jackson? And these two quarterbacks right now are probably the two, I don't want to say best young quarterbacks in the league because you have Deshaun Watson, you have plenty of others, but right now these two guys are leading what most people think are the two best teams in the AFC, and we all know that throughout all sports, not only the NFL, we've had plenty of individual player rivals, and I think Lamar versus Pat could be that next rivalry. So Bleacher Report asked a couple of their writers, Gary Davenport, Ty Dune, Mike Freeman, Brad Gagnon, Matt Miller, Brent Soblisky, and Mike Tanier, and these are the results. So Davenport chose Patrick Mahomes, and he said this appears to be a difficult call and a decision with no wrong answer. After all, when your choices are the last two MVPs, da-da-da. However, for this writer at least, the easy one is Mahomes. It's a no knock on Lamar, who piled up all of his stats, but after barely playing as a rookie, Mahomes became just the second signal caller in NFL history to pass over 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns in the same season. And yeah, his numbers did dip a little bit, but he did get injured and did miss a couple games. And I just think a lot of the points brought up here by Davenport are really good because when you're comparing Pat Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, a lot of times people like to put them in the same class, and I totally understand why. Once again, they're two of the better young quarterbacks in the National Football League, and they've each won an MVP. However, when you look, and I totally understand, like, when you compare Mahomes and Jackson to quarterbacks around the league, from the young that are pretty young, like Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott and Jared Goff and Kyler Murray and Daniel Jones, right? When you're comparing Mahomes and Lamar to those guys, it's easy to put those two guys in the same class because, once again, they're just more proven. However, at the same time, when you look and compare both Jackson and Mahomes more closely, between just the two of those guys, you'll realize I don't think it's that close. To start off, Patrick Mahomes has a Super Bowl ring. And even though Lamar Jackson has an MVP, Pat Mahomes has an MVP as well. And oh yeah, he also has a Super Bowl ring and a Super Bowl MVP. Number two, I understand head-to-head, in big context doesn't really mean that much, especially when the two players haven't ever met in a playoff game yet, like Mahomes and Lamar, and they've only played two times, and I will, totally admit that the two times Pat Mahomes and Lamar Jackson have gone up against each other, both times have been at Arrowhead Stadium, and you guys know how big of an home field advantage Arrowhead Stadium is, but Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs have won both of those matchups. This season, Week 3, the Chiefs head to Baltimore on Monday Night Football, and I will say this. If the Baltimore Ravens lose that game in front of their home crowd and Kansas City just goes in there and makes a statement and gets the win, Kansas City right now, even though they are really considered by most to be the big favorite, not only to win the AFC again, but to win the Super Bowl again, for a Week 3 early matchup on Monday Night Football, that is going to be one a lot of people have circled on their calendar, and I do think that is going to be the kind of game where whoever wins really does make just a huge statement because if Kansas City does go into Baltimore and win that game, I think we really have to start asking ourselves, like, can Lamar Jackson really ever beat Pat Mahomes? And there are going to be plenty of reasons why Lamar Jackson is so good that I'm going to talk about, and there are plenty of reasons why people in this article did bring him up as someone that could possibly be better than Pat Mahomes, and there are a bunch of reasons why. But at the same time, first glance, first talking about it, I just think Mahomes is the better player. And if I was going to have one quarterback over the next 10, 15 years, Mahomes or Lamar, my answer would be Pat Mahomes. Okay, so one of the guys that said Lamar Jackson, I'm curious for what exactly his perspective is, because I just told you guys, to me, even though Lamar Jackson won the MVP last year and he was awesome, it's pretty obvious to me. I would take Mahomes. He's just the better overall passer, pure passer. And Lamar Jackson was very good as a passer. Last year, he proved a lot of people wrong as people just thought he couldn't even throw. You guys remember during his pre-draft workout, they had him as a wide receiver. But at the same time, Lamar is super athletic. His speed and how much he jukes as a runner is just ridiculous. His physical gifts are unprecedented. There's no sign that anyone could really stop Lamar Jackson in the open field. And the massive jump he made as a passer last year is really encouraging. And when you look at what exactly Lamar Jackson does, both these guys are very good, but Lamar may actually be the best pure athlete in the sport, and we've never seen someone with that athletic ability be able to play quarterback. And that's what's so cool about his game, is that he may be the best pure athlete in the game, and when you combine his ability to throw the ball well with his running skills, you kind of see why he's almost unstoppable. But at the same time, when you look at Pat Mahomes, too often in today's society, like preferring one player is kind of taken out of context. Like, I'm not saying Lamar Jackson isn't good, but if I were to start a team, you kind of have to factor in many different things. Also, like age and salary and style of play. And the thing that I really like about both of these guys is they're perfect for each of their team system. If Pat Mahomes went to Baltimore and Lamar Jackson went to Kansas City, like if you switch them, you're going to have to change the style of offense for both teams. But both coaches, Harbaugh and Reed, have done a really nice job of setting up their offense for their quarterback to succeed in the best way. And that's mainly for Baltimore. Obviously, Andy Reid has done a great job with Pat Mahomes. I've said this multiple times that Andy Reid is one of the more underrated coaches in the National Football League. You think now that he won his Super Bowl ring that he will finally start to get enough credit. But I've said Andy Reid is a phenomenal coach for a long time. And the reason why I always said that was, even though he couldn't win a Super Bowl ring, Andy Reid did a really nice job of coaching guys that before they got to Philadelphia or Kansas City just weren't really known for anything. I don't want to say they were career backups, but in most cases, a lot of them were. And Andy Reid got career seasons from Jeff Garcia and Donovan McNabb and Alex Smith. And now you're finally seeing, when you put an elite coach like Andy Reid with an elite quarterback talent like Pat Mahomes, Kansas City is elite, and they have a chance to become a dynasty and win multiple Super Bowls with Mahomes and Reid over the next couple of years. But Baltimore, when it kind of hit me why I would believe in Baltimore last year, it was because they were zigging when the rest of the league was zagging. You see teams like Kansas City and there's plenty of other teams. Arizona has the air raid offense, kind of the way LSU's offense was in college football last year. Well, Baltimore's doing the opposite of that. I don't think you guys know, as an NFL defensive coordinator, you have to prepare for a different team scheme every single week. And it's just very hard when you're going from preparing for teams' air raid offense, like, the Chiefs or the Saints or the Cardinals or whoever, to preparing for a team like the Ravens when all they really do is run the ball and you have to deal with tackling Lamar Jackson. So that's a big reason as to why I think the Baltimore Ravens were so good last year. It's going to be interesting to see how exactly teams around the league try to adjust to that. A lot of times in baseball, when you have a rookie pitcher, some hitters tend to struggle off the bat against it because they're just not used to it. I'm curious to see if that happens with the Baltimore Ravens this season in the AFC. Now, even though I said very clearly I would take Mahomes over Lamar Jackson, there was one thing and one point in this article made on the side of Lamar Jackson that I really like. And obviously, when a lot of people ask you, like, what's your initial gut reaction, Mahomes or Lamar, a lot of people are going to say Pat Mahomes. But when I think about it, I could see why people pick Lamar Jackson for this reason. And that reason is very simple. And that is, as good as Patrick Mahomes is, and he's great, it's hard to see him improving upon the numbers that we've already seen. But here's the thing. Lamar Jackson has already won an MVP, and he hasn't even come close to reaching his full potential as both a runner and a passer. I hear a lot of people say, and I totally understand why, that the Baltimore Ravens in 2020 are going to take a step back because a lot of things went right for them last year, and it's very hard to win, 13 games back-to-back years in the National Football League. And keep in mind, the Baltimore Ravens won 14 games last year. But at the same time, everyone is kind of just saying, oh, Lamar Jackson was so good last year, it's going to be very hard to see him doing it again. But there's also the other side of the argument, and that is Lamar Jackson last season was only his second season and first full season starting at quarterback in the National Football League. So there's a chance that he could get better, and that's the point this article is making, especially as a passer. Lamar Jackson was so good last year, and his passing obviously improved, but here's the crazy thing. It could get even better. And as good as Pat Mahomes is, I can't see him being much, much better than he was a season ago. With Lamar and the future, and that's exactly what this debate is, I could see how people are saying Lamar Jackson was so good and so improved in only one offseason. Let's see what he could do from years to come. So I think Pat Mahomes is obviously more of the guarantee, and he is the best pure young passer in the National Football League in terms of young quarterbacks. But at the same time, Lamar Jackson is really good, and maybe Mahomes and Jackson are equal because their games are so opposite. And I totally understand it's very hard to compare. But even the best teams, right, in the NFL find themselves trailing by 2 touchdowns at some point. And I think this is the other main reason why initially I'm going to pick Pat Mahomes over Lamar Jackson, is because when you're down 24-0 in the AFC Championship game or the anywhere in the playoffs, right? And Lamar Jackson is your quarterback, I don't really know how you're going to be able to come back and win that game. I think we kind of saw that problem with Baltimore this season in the playoffs against Tennessee, and the season before that against the LA Chargers, is once they get down by 1 or 2 touchdowns, it's very hard for them to come back, because when you're running the ball, that obviously does take up a lot of clock. And if the defense really does lock in, they should be able to stop it. But at the same time, we saw how quickly Kansas City and Pat Mahomes were able to come back and beat Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans in that playoff game. And I think if I was a Chief fan, that would be a big reason for optimism. There is never, ever any kind of game that you're out of completely when Pat Mahomes is your quarterback. You also saw that in the Super Bowl. The 49ers were up 10 points late in the fourth quarter. They easily could have won that game. And it's just crazy that Kansas City and Pat Mahomes, once again, like he did throughout the playoffs, just turned it on and played so well. So for me, I'm taking Pat Mahomes over Lamar Jackson. At first, when I heard the question, I was like, all right, no doubt about it, it's Mahomes. But hearing the side of some people who said Lamar Jackson, I opened up my opinion a little bit to it, especially the question based on potential that Lamar could be that much better, but we don't know that about Mahomes. But I'm taking Mahomes as my quarterback of the future. He is just too good of a natural passer.